totally waste of the, due to one only event, they are losing. So this way, this ERS as well as medium range weather forecast and our now costing, they are very much helpful to the farmers. And this is the economic benefit. I'm just showing the range in the rupees from 5,000 to almost 1 lakh. They have got the benefit to the farmers. It is a just number of farmers. So how they are saving using these all products. So this is for cereal crops for during the monsoon season. And sometimes people, they are not coming with the economics. They are having their own assumptions. So we are telling, we are not sharing.
We have
to
1
this.
minute left.
Yes, sir.
Just only 1 minute left.
Yes, I'm just last slide. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Any question? Yeah.
Dr. Kailash, nice presentation. Only my own observation is that, and question is also, I think, that you have presented about this NDVI. Any study or in comparison with the SMI soil moisture, we have observation also, forecast also, because that September and all the NDVI is increased, NDVI, and then beginning and end it has decreased. So in connection with soil moisture, so any study is there?
Yes, sir.
That
Yes.
is one thing. Second observation, this is only observation, how these cost difference is there, AIS farmer and non-AIS farmer. That price, one yield was there, 4,700, 4,500. 11th number. So that one you can just see.
Yes.
Okay.
Sir, I will answer two questions. Sir, what we did, sir, we have taken some villages. So we are taking both the soil moisture observations at the different locations. We have validated our soil moisture observation with our own data. Even NDVI, we have the NDVI from the satellite. Even we have the instrumentation. We validated that. After that only, after 3-4 years of this exercise, we have build the confidence. So we got that validation part. And this answer, sir, the price in the market is fluctuating. Somebody has sell today, that price may not be there after tomorrow. So that's why the price fluctuation is there, sir. For soybean, it is almost now it is below 4,000. So that is the only reason for this not getting the higher return in the that particularly 11 number price of soybean. Yes.
Thank you for a very nice presentation. So I do have a quick question, two questions, technical. So how big is the area that you are providing the service, and how do you communicate with each of them? Is it a meeting, or is it email or radio, or how do you do that? And the second is, you have shown some field observation. So you are taking some portable equipments during that time, and how you are doing that?
Thank you, madam. Actually, this question is very important. Actually, we have various mode of dissemination. Either I'm just using the social media platform, WhatsApp groups are there. Secondly, Akashvani radios, TV shows, newspaper, and most popular is among the farmers is this WhatsApp group. Even bi-weekly, Tuesday and Friday. And for this, our because we are formulating advisory every Tuesday and Friday. Today is the Tuesday. Secondly, some products are available. Alert based message we are getting: hailstorm, heat wave. That time we are giving the short messages to WhatsApp group. And third one is the most popular is we have our own YouTube channel, University. So we are creating only 2.5 minute video. We are just giving the essence what to do, what is the condition for next few days. So accordingly, they are just looking that message and they are doing the operations. Even dissemination mode is having the very big list. Secondly, farmers, even even we are posting the message, they are not reading. They need to listen. They are used to listen. So that's why we are creating the videos. And very good progressive farmers in one village. So they are disseminating their messages to their colleagues, to the other farmers also. So dissemination is not problem to outreach to the farmers. Even from the TV also we are getting. Regarding these observations, yes, we have our own field. We are doing the similar kind of, we are doing the same kind of operations what rain-fed, the dryland farmers are doing. We are not giving any irrigation. So actual observations we are getting. Same times we are doing sowing operation. So in between we are taking the observations to know the crop health. So we are just learning how the crop is performing with these different kinds of weather events. So that has given us to understand the crop physiology perfectly. And accordingly, we are just looking for our entire 8 districts of our domain, because our region is in Maharashtra. Just this is the we have the 4 zones. The particular Western Maharashtra, we are now in Western Maharashtra, Konkan, Marathwada, and Vidarbha. So in our domain subdivision, we have 8 districts. So we are catering the services for 8 districts.
So you are capturing all the crops that within your command area
Yeah, we
for
have
advisory?
seasonal crops. In monsoon, we have the soybean, cotton, black gram, green gram. And after that, we have horticulture crops, either citrus, guava, grapes, banana, and then poultry, goatry, animal husbandry. Everything we are covering in our agromet advisory.
And so those are the portable equipments?
Yeah, these are the portable equipments. We are taking the some. These are the vegetables, middle one, because we need to give the advisory on vegetable also. So we are taking observation in vegetable field also, orchards also, and in cereal crops also.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, doctor.
Thank you.
Our next speaker on seasonal stream flow forecasts for water and energy management, opportunities and challenges by Dr. Sankar.
You all hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so this is kind of a work that I have done for the past 10 to 15 years. So before I begin, I just would like to thank Dr. Pai, Dr. Rajiv, and Dr. Srijit for this opportunity. So just to get started, how we expect the forecast to vary various timescales. Similarly, applications also vary across various spatio-temporal scales. One thing that can be operations like nowcasting, and then we have seasonal planning, and then the longer time scale is more relevant for hindcast and planning and design, and this is more like a decadal time scale. So the most of the work that I'm going to talk today is more in the context of seasonal forecasting and updating the seasonal forecasting in the context of water management, and also how it is important for energy management as well. So just to get started, I think, like for example, in the case of agriculture, where it is mostly rainfed means, then I think the forecast is very critical, or in other words, the variability of the forecast within the season is very critical too. Whereas if we think about water management, particularly in the irrigated agriculture context, you expect mostly the forecast to be, some of the intra-seasonal variability of the forecast will be absorbed by the reservoirs. So we developed a reservoir model that can take an ensemble, because forecast obviously needs to be in the context of probabilities, and it's a multi-reservoir model. And so basically we converted the precipitation and temperature information with the land surface model, or you can develop a statistical model in terms of developing stream flow forecasts. And then you have a reservoir model that's basically a simulation model. And the idea is to basically optimize the allocation for various users. And so the inflow forecasts are represented in the form of ensemble. This is a very trivial parallelization problem. And you can run the simulation model. And once you get the simulation done for the given releases, this is the target release for different uses, which could be water supply, irrigation, or hydropower. And the most important aspect in the context of utilizing forecast for reservoir management is the end of the season or the end of the year target storage, because sometimes if you have very significant storage within the basin, that can in fact allocate the entire water purely based on the initial storage, then the forecast may not be that useful. It's like, having a, $1 million in the checking account and you're going to spend like $1,000. It's not going to be that important. But on the other hand, if it is going to be constraining, then that's the time the forecast is going to be very useful. And there are also other information, like, for example, if you have a detailed water contracts or, tariffs that you can apply for collecting the supply, then that's something we can also apply at the individual user level reliability. So I'm going to start the talk. I mean, this is more or less like 7 or 8 basins I have worked on, and I'm going to pick 2 cases that are very interesting. That is, one is the Sierra Northeast Brazil, and another one is the Angat Reservoir in Philippines. So they both are pretty contrasting in the context of Northeast Brazil is very semi-arid, whereas Angat this basically supplies water for Metro Manila. It's a humid river basin, and you have for Metro Manila they do have 2 rainfall seasons: southwest monsoon and northeast monsoon. And whereas in the case of the Sierra, it's primarily only 1 rainfall season. That's all the way from anywhere from February to June, or maybe basically the inflows are only during January to June. Rest of the time it is pretty much 0 flows. So the target is primarily only 1 season forecast, and both these influences are both these locations are heavily influenced by ENSO. And I have here, let me just move this. So you can see that, for example, for October, November, December, during the time ENSO is really at its peak, the correlation with 3.4 is pretty good. And whereas both Atlantic and tropical Pacific influence in the context of Sierra. So it's not just the case of the, ENSO alone. Both dynamical models also give you a good forecast. But the key context that I want to emphasize here is that in the case of Sierra, they can hold almost 5 times the annual demand of water, whereas in the case of Angat Reservoir in Metro Manila, they can hold, in fact, less than a year. So the storage to annual demand ratio is 0.72. This is the main storyline here, that it's not just the forecast skill alone. What matters is that what kind of system we have and how do we manage it better. So obviously in the case of Sierra, they wait for the rainy season to end, and then they decide the allocation for July to December. Whereas in the case of the Angat, it's, throughout the season, they do that. And we primarily focused on October to February, all the way 5 months forecast for Angat. And the dynamical models also, as I mentioned, they do predict pretty well. So in the case of the Angat, that's what I will be presenting the results a little bit more in detail. It's basically, we use a ECM 4.5 forecast with persistent SSE. Their actual forecast issued in October, and then we updated it every month during the season in terms of what we can do. We also use the previous month stream flow as an additional predictor. So basically, we use principal component regression in terms of developing these forecasts. And so both locations show pretty good skill, and obviously in the case of the Sierra, it has a lot of storages. So obviously the forecast will have limited utility, you will see at the end. Whereas in the case of the Angat, that's not the case. So what you are seeing here is basically the forecast for Angat is around 0.58. This is in a pure forecasting mode for the next 5 months. This is kind of the seasonal total. And then we, and then we apply it with monthly updated forecast. So one critical thing in the context of reservoir management is that it's basically what kind of rule curves you have for reservoir operation, whether you have flood control pool, you have a conservation pool, or you are below the conservation pool. In the case of the Angat, they do have 2 curves, upper and lower. So if you are above, then you can basically take the water for water supply, irrigation, and hydropower. If you are between upper and lower, you can take the water only for water supply and irrigation. If you're below the lower rule curve, basically we are in drought conditions, then you can take the water only for Metro Manila water supply. And so you can see here the situation for 1997-98 El Nino conditions. The reservoir really recorded its lowest level. And so what you're seeing here is the allocation for 5 months. And in 1997, this is a forecast issued in 1997. You can see that the red line is the target for municipal, that is water supply. The green line is the irrigation, and hydropower, of course, it can take whatever it wants because its marginal cost is lower in terms of generating energy. So you can see that 1997, the forecast is nicely showing that it's going to be a below normal year in terms of the allocation, and also that is predicted by the water management model with the allocation is going to be lesser than that of what is expected. So what you can see that, as the forecast potential varies, the conditional probabilities on how the reservoir storage will be met is also going to vary. So one important constraint that we included in this one is that what would be the target storage we want to have at the end of February, because you don't want to let the forecast say what is going to be the stream flow coming in and not having water at the end of the season. So we included that as a firm constraint that you need to bring back the rule curve to the operational level by February so that you don't run out of water during the summer season. So that's the idea behind it. And we updated the forecast all through the season, and continuous updating during drier years, it helps in improving, or in other words, in terms of restrictions, and also reducing the allocation during the season. And also the most important thing is that during wet years, the lower panel shows that compared to climatology, you can, if you keep updating the forecast during wet conditions, you will be able to generate additional hydropower. So basically, where does it come from? It comes from not letting the water spill through the reservoir. And if you spill the water from the reservoir, you're not letting it go through the turbine. It's a last opportunity. And the right side plot nicely shows that how updating the forecast helps in bringing back the reservoir rule curve to the operational level. So you can see that these are the 3 dry years that we see updating the forecast continuously, bringing back to the operational rule curve, which is around 570 million meter cube. And by basically going for restriction in terms of Metro Manila water supply as well as for irrigation. And in fact, the Metro Manila water supply is run by 2 private agencies, and so they were able to. So we, in fact, went there, and when I was at IR, I demonstrated some of these forecasts. So how, for example, the key point is how to use the target storage as a constraint in terms of meeting, in terms of season beginning allocation, and then following that through the season. So what you can see here is that I have here, it's a busy slide. I'll try to go. So you have the observations that are the dots, and this is the 0.33 percentile, 0.66 percentile. These are the 3 terciles, and if you are above here these dots, then it's a wet year. So for example, you run both the climatology as well as the forecast. So I have 3 different models, and the climatology is the solid line, and and you can see the 3 different models. So whenever the forecast is going to be drier, like for example, you see here, this is for Falls Lake, North Carolina, where I live. This is a major reservoir, and you can see that the probability of going below the target storage is going to be much higher than that of the climatology. On the other hand, if it is a wet year, like for example, you see here in 1996, which ended up being basically, you have all the 3 models nicely go below the climatology. That means you have a very high probability of meeting the target storage. I think including target storage as a constraint is very important, and also the other aspect, which is basically multi-model in general, improves the overconfidence of a single model. Basically, you have a much more calibrated stream flow forecast. So the restrictions, you can now, okay, if I'm above by 10%, what is the amount of restriction that I will have with the climatology. You can now come up with the allocation model in terms of revising your storages. And also, like for example, the city I live in, we have mandatory, restrictions and also voluntary restrictions. That is at the initial level. Then, more of a serious level of restriction. So we do have that, and that helps in restricting the amount of water use that we do have. So this is another example that we did for Masinga Dam in Kenya, in which it showed very clearly that if we utilize the forecast, and whether it is single model or multi-model, in general, it helps in improving the hydropower generation. For example, if you don't have water in Masinga Dam, 55% of the energy of the country depends on Masinga Dam. So I think the hydropower is the key aspect, and so basically you're going to have power cuts and other things. So I think the key message here is that when you have reservoir storage that can buffer the variability, it is important to consider the end of the target storage as the key constraint for allocating. So I started the presentation with two reservoirs, Oros in Brazil, Northeast Brazil. Another one is the Angat Reservoir in Philippines. Angat Reservoir, the storage to demand is 0.72, whereas Oros is like around 5. So that means it can supply 5 times the annual demand. So you can see the percentage improvement in terms with respect to climatology. So when you have a very large storage system, naturally, the improvement from the climatology is going to be lower. When you have a very small storage system compared to the annual demand, then you are going to have, even if the forecast is moderately skillful, like 0.5, the improvement that you are going to get from the forecast is going to be extremely useful. And of course, it depends on what purpose you put the water into use. If it is hydropower, all translates into higher revenue, because it's all the marginal cost of hydropower is much higher compared to water supply or irrigation. So naturally, it helps in bringing more benefits into play. So just to wrap up some of the things that we did in the context of like how streamflow forecast, we also developed the streamflow and storage forecast for North Carolina. So we basically take the precipitation forecast from IRI along with the spatial downscaling and disaggregation. We run NASA's land information system to develop monthly and the seasonal forecasts, and this is updated for most of the headwater basins. These are all virgin basins upstream of reservoirs, and so you take these forecasts and run it with the reservoir model to see what kind of storage you will have. And like water managers, they can go in, okay, I want downstream of Falls Lake 450 cube per second, and this is the 55 million gallons per day for the city. Then they will be able to analyze what kind of storage conditions they are going to have at the end of the season, and then you will be able to revise your allocation accordingly. And so we also have another one product, which I think the next speaker is going to talk about the NOAA's hydrological forecast. So we do take, in fact, national water model forecast and post-process it at various time scales in terms of estimating stream flow forecast for ungaged location. For gauge location, it's easier, but for ungaged locations, it's much more difficult, because we basically, the post-processing model translates the error characteristics at a given location to predict or to forecast for ungaged locations. So we do, in fact, have a Shiny app that can help in terms of downloading these forecasts. And so the previous work that I showed for North Carolina is with the State Climate Office, whereas this one is through a project through National Science Foundation. So kind of to wrap up here, so, from the synthesis is that from 7 reservoir system, for seasonal forecast to be useful, initial storage should constrain the allocation. If not, so if it constrains the disposal reliability, like Oros, that's a classical case, even though you have a good forecasting skill, but its utility is going to be lesser. But if not, you can use the end of the season target storage as a way to improve your allocation. And it also helps from a different context, that if the skill is good in only one season, you can use that information to bring back the rule curve to operational level. And basically, it helps in restricting below normal seasons, and also to reduce spillage and the increased allocation for above normal conditions in terms of generating hydropower. And obviously, probabilistic forecasts are more beneficial, because we'll be able to evaluate the end of the season's target storage from the, compared to the climatology, how far we are going to go. And naturally, within your storage systems are going to be much more gain from the forecast utility, and by reducing system losses, which is spill and evaporation. And basically, the idea is that multiple users, if there are then there is going to be more benefit for the forecast. We are able to constrain the allocation. And but the thing is that also brings other challenges, like institutional challenges in terms of utilizing the forecast. Maybe multiple agencies are operating, and that can have its own challenges from the implementation of the operation that we do face here in North Carolina as well. So I will just to quickly, like how I discussed the idea of using steep flow forecast for reservoir management. Similarly, we can also use power demand forecast for operating water and energy systems. So this is a 28 reservoir model linked with the energy system model, TEMOVA. And so we have an opportunity. So we demonstrated this one in the context of using seasonal forecast for quantifying the hydropower, so that the energy system model can use it for their planning, and like, for example, fuel stockpiling and other aspects, because from the energy system perspective, the more the hydropower, the better it is. And so this is basically the model. Idea is to link TEMOVA and our water allocation model to utilize precipitation and temperature to develop the stream flow and power demand forecast for running these two optimization models. And I'm not presenting the details of those results, but this is something I want to put it out. And obviously, various funding agencies and my collaborators. I'll be happy to stop here and take questions.
Yeah, thank you. Any question? Thank you, sir. But I have just one small, because whatever you are presenting, basically it is benefit for the water management, I think it can be extended for the flood forecast, because if you provide that similar, generate that for the flood forecasting 1 month, at least seasonal, not seasonal, monthly, using monthly data.
Yeah, I do. I think the flood forecasting aspect is what I briefly presented about the national water model post-processing. So that is more at in the context of the weather, and as opposed to longer time scale. I mean, utilizing flood forecast for the seasonal has its own challenges. I mean, basically, the seasonal total is going to absorb some of the flood information. But like if we are looking at maybe week ahead forecast, or if we have a very large drainage basin, then naturally longer time scale lead also will be good, anywhere up to 15 days or something.
Yeah, because that gives some advanced idea longer lead time for the preparation and flood management. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the main thing there is that, we need to find a way to translate the, we are not going to have stream flow observations available at all locations. The idea is to translate what error characteristics you have at gauged observations into ungauged observations. That will help in terms of making the forecast more utility, because we will be able to mean, somebody wants to paddle in for whitewater rafting here in North Carolina. That's a popular thing. So we need to provide stream flow conditions, and they may not have engaged nearby. So obviously, those things will be very good.
Thank you, sir, for the very nice, informative presentation.
Thank you.
Our last speaker, Dr. Nochiketa, on hydrology sector, overview of NOAA's hydrology ensemble forecast system.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Please continue.
Okay. Thank you. I'm so sorry. It's already so late there, so I'll be very quick. So those who know me or don't know me, my name is Nochiketa Acharya. I recently changed the office within the NOAA. I used to be in physical science lab under Office of Atmospheric Research. I joined recently Office of Water Prediction and the company called Linker. And today I'm going to give very quick overview of NOAA's hydrology ensemble focus service. And thanks to the earlier speaker who gave a really good background of the stream flow prediction and their impact. So the way it works in it has right now, this whole system is actually giving forecast more than 3,000 stream flow locations. And it's actually making to bridge the gap between the plan, like the application and the generation of the forecast. Anyway, so quickly give an overview. So before this whole hydrology ensemble focus system, I used to have a system called ensemble stream flow prediction, or ESP, which is basically using a kind of long historical data to kind of giving a monitoring, not prediction, but kind of a giving an outlook. So it has a lot of limitation and drawbacks because it doesn't incorporate the uncertainty of the forecast, and it's not a probabilistic forecast, although. So this whole HEFS system started in experimental almost more than 10 to 15 years, but it was actually started in operation since last year, and it's actually incorporating the different time scale of the forecast, starting from short range to climate forecast, and it captured the uncertainty of the hydrology forecast and all those things. So just to give a overview how it looks, basically these are very simple hydrographs. The dotted black is like observed flow, and this whole blue shaded is the ensemble of this forecast system comes, and the red one is deterministic. It's basically very common graph we use for hydrometeorology, but that's the whole point. But to make this graph, they have a lot of different module or different system, and the way it works is it has a two different sector. In the green, which is mostly the meteorological sector, like where we incorporate different forecasts starting from day one to climatology, and it has a different input starting with the forecast from Weather Prediction Office, the River Focus Center. Then we also incorporate this the medium range forecast from 1 to 16 days from GFS, then kind of using the climate focus system from next almost 6 months, and just put the climatological data. But you cannot use this raw forecast as it is. As you know, a lot of focus, a lot of uncertainty. So they have a system called Meteorological Ensemble Forecasting Focus Processor, or MEFP, which incorporate a lot of different things. First, it's handle the bias correction. Then it's kind of stitch the different time scale or march in a time. And then they do the downscaling. And when I say the downscaling, it's not only the spatial downscaling, it also have a temporal downscaling, because different forecasts at different range. And for the hydrology model, we need a kind of a subdaily grid, a subdaily time scale. So it has a lot of temporal time scale in, and also it has another component which is not here. It's called multivariate reordering, because when we do a lot of post-processing, the post-process forecast kind of lose or kind of eliminate the inter-variable relationship. That's what it has to do. Another kind of post-processing, which is called multivariate reordering. Nowadays, they are using shuffle, but they have a lot of different other things. But after this whole thing, which is we're familiar from the meteorology community, then the whole system starts called ensemble post-processing. So using all the forcing, they run the national water model or WRF hydro. And after that, they kind of do another set of bias correction in the ensemble, in the stream flow field, and then kind of making different kind of bias correction using the historical stream flow. And finally, they make the focus. But this whole focus also go a verification system called ensemble verification system. So that's kind of the whole structure of HGFS. And based on that, so this is one slide they want to show always, like how it improved over the old system, which is ensemble's stream flow system, to the forecasting system. And you can see here that this whole the ensemble spread is kind of misplaced to the high flow because we don't incorporate the forecast. We're just using the climatology in the ESP. But in case of HGFS, they kind of capture this uncertainty, capture this high flow for this particular incident using HGFS. So now coming to the most interesting part here, like the application. So this is kind of 3,000 location, and it's operational route, as I say, from the last year. But it has a lot of uses. Now, like we talked about flood forecast impact in the last talk. So it start actually the main uses is flood forecast, then water supply, then hydroelectric, different kind of impact with diesel support. So it has a huge application, and NOAA and the US has a state-wise or country-wise system called FIRO, which is Forecast Informed Reservoir Operation. And almost every state nowadays, they use this FIRO, and the main component to implement this FIRO is HGFS. I just want to give one example where I used to work 10 years back in New York City. And back that time, we were using this HGFS. And right now, this is like a poster boy of HGFS, this whole New York City water drinking system, because they are using almost 10 years in the research mode. So just giving you a little bit of geography. So New York City has all the water, drinking water coming from the upstate of New York. And the upstate has the two different kind of cluster of reservoir. One is a Catskill watershed and one is Cotton watershed. And all those water comes in a gravity pool, and they don't use much money to filtration. It's very unique. It's going on almost 200 years. So the way this whole DP or Department of Environmental Protection use apps is very unique, because they kind of develop a system called Operation Support Tool System, OST. And the OST use this whole HEPS forecast to kind of support this whole operational decision, like where the water comes and where the water goes. And they have a lot of construction going on, and how to stop in one aqueduct, then open another. So HAF is like the skeleton of this whole system. And it's actually avoid almost $10 billion for the water filtration cost, and that's kind of huge. And little more on that, it's not only the water quality or water quantity, they also use a lot of different application over the New York City, and this is like one snapshot of that. And also, I just show New York City here. There's another also California, and recently that Texas, they started this whole process. But there's a lot of there's a two goal. One is like short term and one is long term. The short term goal, which is led by OWPD or Office of Water Prediction, in 3 years, to thinking about implementing a different kind of post processing, because the post processing we're using right now, it doesn't capture the extreme as we expect. So we are thinking about adding some kind of penalized regression. We're also thinking about eliminate the forced diurnal temperature pattern, and also implement a little bit of more different kind of ensemble post processing for the stream flow. And also another thing that we are not only implementing how to improve the forecast, it's also like how to disseminate the forecast. So usually it's all crops, but our partners for different water resource for different state, they want a data. So we are kind of in process to make a customizable drop six with the data and all those things, and having kind of a dashboard. You click somewhere, you get the historical data, you get all the forecast, all those things. So that's kind of the short-term goal in 3 years. In the long-term goals, which is 3 to 5 years, it will be led by a cooperative institute called Cooperative Institute for Research to Operation in Hydrology, which is a cooperative institute between University of Alabama and OWP. and they have a different, section. One is obviously improving the post-processing in the short range, improving the post-processing for the ensemble, but also how to incorporate the S2S forecast. Because right now we are just using, the data from CFS, just a simple bias correction and using that thing. But we kind of thinking about, instead of just a CFS, why not we use the whole plume of NMME and whole plume of new seasonal forecast and doing all bias correction and disaggregate and do those things. So that's kind of 3 to 5 years R&D plan on that. And also, it's not here, but they are also thinking about having another system which is called the next generation NWM or National Water Model, where it has a right now this whole HEFS is very hard to implement if some researcher want to implement in their own basin and do a lot of research. But thinking about having a module of NWM where people can change different forcing and see the impact. So we are also thinking having a different next generation model in 1 to 2 years, again led by WP and Cairo. I think on that sense, thank you very much. And I was very quick because I understand I'm the last person to talk, but I'm happy to take any question right now. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Nachiketa. Any question? Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Pulak, for chairing this session, and Dr. Ashutosh for all the notes. And thanks for all the speakers of this session. And thanks to all the participants also for patiently listening all the presentations and providing inputs throughout the day. So that's the end for the day. Sir, are we also looking for some discussion, 5 minutes or? So if somebody wants to make some comments, some suggestions from whatever
I
presentations.
think if any question for last fourth speaker, anybody want to again raise question, they can ask. Or any suggestion regarding this. I think you regard that throughout the day, any suggestion, all the lectures, any discussion.
I think everyone is tired now,
Yeah,
so we can end the day. Any announcement for tomorrow? Okay, so we'll meet again tomorrow in the same room at 9:30. Okay. Thank you, everyone, and have a nice evening.